My name is Barbara Blake. I am the chair of this committee and I'm a Seven Sisters ward councillor. So if I can get members to introduce themselves, please, starting on my left.
My name is Reg Rice. I'm councillor Tottenham Hale and vice chair of this committee.
Councillor Sue Jameson, Bruce Castle.
Alex Worrell, councillor for Stroud Green.
George Dunstall, Stroud Green as well.
Nicola Bartlett, West Green.
Councillor Scott Emery, Highgate Ward.
Councillor Amina Ibrahim, Knoll Park.
Kathy Brennan, Muswell. Kathy Brennan, Muswell Hill.
Councillor O'Donovan, Tottenham Hale Ward.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park. Chair, there seems to have been a problem getting the papers out because some of us didn't get the papers till 1 or 2 days. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, I will look into that. I'll look into that after the meeting. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. If I can ask the officers present to introduce themselves, please, starting on my left.
Felicity Foley, I'm the committee's manager.
Cody Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Matthew Barrett, Legal Services.
Rob Shasovsky, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Robbie McKnocker, Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Philip Elliott, Principal Planning Officer.
John McRoy, Major Applications Team Leader.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Suzanne Kimman, Climate Change Manager.
Thank you. And other officers are in attendance virtually and they will introduce themselves when relevant. So good evening to everybody. Item 1, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. So could you please note that in the pack. We're on to item 2, which is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. That's for noting, please. We have no apologies for absence. Everyone's here. There are no items of urgent business. And we're on to declarations of interest. So do members have any declarations of interest, please? No? Okay, thank you. So we are now on to item 6, which is the minutes of various last outstanding meetings. And I apologise for this, but all the minutes will be available for approval at the meeting on the 18th of July. So they will be available before that meeting so that we can all read them and look at them. So we're on to item 7. We'll now consider the planning applications, which moves us swiftly on to item 8. And that's the Beryl Quarter, Ashley Road. And in your pack, in the packets, pages 1 to 360. I won't read out the proposal because that is in the pack. The recommendation is to grant, and I will ask Philip Elliott to introduce the application. Let me just say before I bring you in, there are no objections to, for this item, but the applicant team are here and will be available to answer any questions. But I'll come on to you when Philip's introduced the application. So over to you, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for Beryl Quarter. It's a site in Tottenham Hale near to the station. Just want to draw members' attention to the addendum report, which has been circulated. It just includes updates and corrections and additional condition. So the site sits to the west of Watermead Way and the railway line serving Tottenham Hale underground and railway stations. To its west is Ashley Road, with Downley Park located to the northwest. It sits within one of several allocated sites that are within and adjacent to Tottenham Hale District Centre, which is undergoing significant change into a high-density mixed-use district located around the transport hub. Within the site is Borough House, a locally listed industrial building that was formerly a pencil factory. And adjacent is the recently constructed building called the Gessner, which is a mixed-use building with commercial spaces and build-to-rent units. So the district centre framework, which was issued back in 2015, acted as an evidence base to inform the Tottenham Area Action Plan to allow for the implementation of proposals in and around the Tottenham Hale District Centre. The framework helped to form the strategy and the development within Tottenham Hale. The DCF District Centre framework identifies the site as being suitable for medium-rise buildings and for mixed-use schemes of high-density businesses and homes occupying converted and new purpose-built accommodation. The site falls within site allocation TH6, which is identified in the Tottenham Area Action Plan. The site allocation seeks to create an employment-led mixed-use quarter north of the new district centre. It's also intends to create a new east-west route linking Downlane Park and Hale Village, and enhancements to the Ashley Road public realm. And it also states that residential use will be permitted to cross-subsidise improvements to the employment stock. So a master plan was developed for TH6, which was called the Ashley Road South Master Plan, or ARSM. The buildings which form the ARSM are developed by the applicant and by Notting Hill Genesis, who have worked collaboratively to deliver a master plan for the whole site. The master plan has been split into 4 permissions, which include Ashley Gardens, which is there to the sort of left-hand side of the image. Ashley House, which is on the west side of Ashley Road, the other side of that red line. Cannon Factory, which is to the north of the image, and then the Borough Yard site. Ashley Gardens is nearing completion. Rosa Luxembourg has been completed, and the rest of the development is almost completed. The Notting Hill sites at Ashley House and Cannon Factory have been implemented but haven't come forward yet. And the Borough Yard site, the Gessner, has been implemented, but Borough House and the college building that you can see here hasn't started and hasn't progressed. So within Borough Yard, the permission included a 2-storey extension to Borough House, which would have had 18 homes in the roof in the extension, and the Gessner 166 build-to-rent homes in a Part 8, Part 14-storey building, which is completed and occupied. And then it also included a college, which had over 7,000 square metres of education floor space. As I was saying, the college and Borough House have not been progressed, and extensive marketing has been submitted by the applicant to show that the college is not feasible and won't be coming forward. There's also a linked application which has also been submitted, which would vary the relevant conditions attached to the extent Borough Yard planning permission. This would enable any reference to phases of the scheme that are no longer intended to be delivered to be removed. So that's largely Borough House and the college building. And this would be dealt with if these proposals were to get planning permission this evening. So just to show some of the emerging context, this is a view looking south at the emerging context in Tottenham Hale. The college building and the Borough House site is shown in yellow. The majority of these buildings are under construction or nearing completion, albeit not the Notting Hill sites, Cannon Factory and Ashley House, and the Argent Station Centre development, which is implemented but hasn't come above ground yet. This shows the emerging context today in a view looking north. So again, you can see that Argent site that's yet to sort of break ground. This is a little bit in the past, so the Wellborn to the left and Ashley Road East to the centre of the image have now been constructed and are completed. This is a satellite image just showing a bird's eye view of that site, and it just identifies that green link that runs through the site, running from the High Road and Chestnut Road in the west, all through the site, and then onto the paddock in the east and further onto the wetlands. So this plan shows how the proposed development would look in the proposed master plan. It shows other schemes such as the Notting Hill sites, which have got permission but not yet come forward. It also just shows again that green link and then that potential future bridge that comes through and would go over the railway line into Hale Village. So just some details about the proposal. It includes a 3-storey roof extension to Barrow House, the locally listed building. There'll be an uplift in commercial floor space of almost 2,200 square meters. And then the 2-Barrow Yard development would be a 32-storey building with 210 build-to-rent homes, over 700 square meters of commercial floor space, and 161 square meters of community floor space at first floor level in the building. It would have 35% affordable housing, and it would also include enabling works for the bridge. So a little on build to rent. The London plan acknowledges that build to rent developments can make a positive contribution to increasing housing supply and are a beneficial form of development. Policy H11 of the plan is used to assess build to rent proposals. The proposal before you today complies with policy H11 and would meet the requirements to follow the fast track route where viability is not tested. The London plan seeks unified ownership and management of build to rent proposals, and therefore allows the affordable housing offer to be entirely discount market rent, which is an intermediate banding, as this enables the affordable element to be owned and managed by the build to rent landlord themselves. 30% of the affordable element would be London living rent housing, and 70% would be let at a discount to market rent. The 2 beds would be let at 25% discount, and the 3 beds of the affordable element would be let at 35% discount from the market rent. Priority would also be given to Haringey residents, and particularly families with children would be prioritised for the 2 and 3 bed homes. So of the 210 homes, 60 would be affordable, with 18 of those let at London living rent levels and 14 at a discount to market rent. So that would equate to 26 2 beds let at 25% discount, with 16 let at a 35% discount. And these proposals are supported by the Haringey's housing team. So this image just shows a bird's eye view and an image looking to the southwest of the model, which you can see before you today. And the tower itself would be a tower with a podium and a core with 5 blocks of different heights, ranging from 6 to 32 stories. The blocks have different heights and materials to reflect their surroundings, and the building has been orientated to maximize access to light and deal with overheating. This is an image of the model just looking towards the east. It shows the Barrow Square and Barrow House and the extension to Barrow House in the lower part of the picture. And then it shows the Green Link building, the 6-storey building, which would have the bridgehead and would then lead to the potential future bridge over Watermead Way and onto Hale Village. This is an image of the model from a view looking northwest. The different heights of the blocks around the central core can be seen, as well as that future potential bridge, which is shown in red in the foreground. The next couple of images just show the development using ViewCity 3D mapping software. So the first image shows the development in red from above in its context, with the taller buildings of the Argent development to the south, and also Anthology Hell Works, which is part of the Hell Village development, to the sort of bottom right-hand corner of that image. And this View City image just shows the constructed Anthology building right in the foreground, those Argent buildings that are yet to be constructed, and then the application building in red, with the Notting Hill building in yellow just to the north of that, which hasn't broken ground yet. So the proposed two-barrel yard building has been designed with different blocks so that its roofscapes reflect the heights of adjacent buildings immediately adjacent to it. The image to the top left shows this with those different roofscapes and different block heights reflecting the different heights of neighbouring buildings. The image to the right also just shows how the utmost height of the building and the tower frames the station with the Anthology building in Hell Village, and also the Argent Station Square development. The other images just show how the building itself fits within the emerging massing wave in the district. And then the bottom right image just shows some of that materiality and how it reflects the colouring of the buildings have sought to reflect some of the materials of the elevations that each individual block faces. This next image is taken from the Townscape Visual Impact Assessment, TVIA, and it shows an image looking from the high road down Chestnut Road. The proposed building itself is shown in a blue colour, and it just basically identifies the green link. And then you can also see the Argent Station Square development just outlined in red just to the right-hand corner. It just shows that sort of landmark role that the building plays in identifying that link through from west to east. So the proposal would provide a new bridgehead to support the delivery of a potential future bridge over Watermead Way and the railway into Hell Village. The applicant would develop a stairway lift and landing platform within the building, the 6-storey building within their site, which they would manage. And the applicant will also be required to fund and produce a feasibility study for the bridge over Watermead Way and onto over the railway. And the contribution in the form of the bridgehead is considered to be reasonable. And it's noted that future developments will also contribute to the delivery of the bridge as and when this is feasible. The next few slides just show some images of the that bit better. The next few images just show Barrow House. So this is an image of the proposal basically on Ashley Road, looking towards the northeast, and you can also see Barrow Square and 2 Barrow Yards just to the right of the image. And this is an image at dusk, just showing Barrow House looking towards the northwest from the square. It just shows the activation, the shop fronts within that square, within Barrow House and the 2 Barrow Yard building. This is an image showing Barrow House from 2 Barrow Yard building. So it's raised at a higher height, so you can see the roof addition and just how it uses sympathetic materials to blend in with the building. And then this is an image looking east through the square, showing that walkway up to the potential future bridge. And there's also that community use there at first floor level with a platform that looks out over the square. And again, you can just see the spaces and the activation that's going on there. And then this image just shows a view looking sort of northwest-west from Watermead Way, showing the potential future bridge. And then also just to the bottom left-hand corner of the image, that sort of link, Ashley Link and Green Link back to the west. So the proposals would introduce a new square and a piece of public realm to the district that would provide activation and host public art. It would be a high quality public space that would provide pedestrian routes through the site east and west. They're just onto some floor plans of Barrow House. Barrow House is to be altered to allow increased movement through the building, which currently acts as a bit of a barrier from east to west movement. The ground floor would have several shop fronts and openings that would activate Ashley Road and the public spaces to be created within the site further to the east. So Two Barrow Yard would have the majority of its ground floor activated by commercial spaces, but there's also some car parking and plant and storage space for refuse. The mezzanine level just above includes the majority of the cycle parking, and the rest of the plant space there. The commercial units within the building would be double height on the whole. So this just shows a typical upper layout. It shows that the regular plan has approximately eight units on each level. Obviously, at the lower levels with the lower building that's 6 stories would have more coming off an angle. The building has been orientated to maximize outlook wherever possible, and the homes all sit around a central core with multiple lift access for fire safety and security. 33% of the units would be enhanced single aspect, which means they would have glazing located on a second facade to the balcony serving the home. You can just about see it in the corner of these images, where you can see that there's an increased enhanced aspect beyond single. And then 65% would be dual aspect with 2% triple aspect. It's felt that aspect has been enhanced as much as possible, given that it's a tall building, and they've used the blocks and the orientation of the building to do this. The building would utilise its podium and roof space to provide amenity and play spaces for residents. There would be a large podium garden at level 1 with a roof terrace amenity space at level 30, all of which would be accessible to all residents. Other roof spaces would be used for planting, green roofs and solar panels. The development would be car-free except for blue badge parking, but on an interim basis there would be additional parking at ground floor level and to the rear of Barrow House within the site. This parking is required as a result of leases that are yet to expire, which give current tenants the right to park on the estate. As part of the conditions, details of the timeframe for removing the additional parking are required, which would ensure that the interim arrangements would cease as soon as possible. The proposal also has a policy compliant level of cycle parking. So in summary, the proposal is a well-designed mixed-use scheme of build-to-rent and commercial spaces that fulfil the requirements of the site allocation. 35% affordable housing consisting of London living rent and discount market rent is proposed, which satisfies policy H11 of the London Plan and the council's housing strategy. Two Barrow Yard is a high quality tall building that is supported by the QRP that would act as a landmark within the wider area. The scheme would create significant new employment opportunities. It would include a new community space and the bridgehead, which would safeguard the potential future bridge and to complete that east-west connection. It would include, it would have acceptable neighbour impacts and an acceptable impact on built heritage, as well as acceptable transport impacts, with it being car-free, except for the blue badge spaces. It has a high level of sustainability with connection to the district energy network. has enhanced tree provision and greenery, and the Health and Safety Executive have reviewed the scheme and are content with the proposals. So the recommendation is as set out from page 2 of the agenda item and in the addendum report. In summary, officers recommend to grant planning permission subject to the signing of the Section 106 legal agreement. I do have a short video just to play, which might help members. It basically just has a whip round the model, which I'll just share that if you just bear with me. So this just shows basically coming in off Ashley Road, sort of looking east as you walk through Beryl Square, and you can see the staircase just leading up to the potential future bridge. You can see the community space at the first floor level, and then just that lobby entrance to the residential units. And then just moving around the square, you can see Barrow House to the left, and then the new sort of street that's created. And this is just going up the walkway now to that bridgehead landing platform and the community use. And then this just shows that community use. And then we'll show a view out into the square. And so this is the new street with Barrow House on your left and to Barrow Yard on your right, walking up towards the Gessner. It just shows some of that activation that's going on at the ground floor. And then also at night time as well, just showing the activation at night time and also highlighting that the space, the square, is available for public art. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Chair. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So do any members have any clarification questions? So I've got Councillor O'Donovan, then Councillor Brennan.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that the future developments will contribute towards finishing off the bridge. I'm not sure whether there's any space in Tottenham Hale for any future developments, and wouldn't it be more sensible to actually resolve the financing of the bridge? We may not be able to complete the bridge because of the difficulties of Crossrail, but wouldn't it make more sense to resolve the finances of the bridge at the moment, because it will be, although it will be used by other people, it is mainly for the use of the developers' residents.
Yes, there are other developments envisaged in some of the site allocations. So the Tottenham Hale Overstation development is one potential funding source. We're not sort of pinning all of our hopes on that. There could be other funding sources. I think in terms of the benefits only being for this development, it is part of the wider strategy, the Green and Open Spaces strategy for the area. So it's a strategic link, and provides benefits for those on the east of the railway track getting west to the high road, and those west of the high road or west of the tracks getting to the Lee Valley Regional Park. So there is wider benefits to be derived really than for this development. I think in terms of sort of policy to push the issue and ask for it and ask for more, we feel we're getting a lot out of this already, and I don't feel that there's really policy to support pushing that further, especially when there is that lack of clarity with Crossrail and no finalised design that the money could actually go straight into that to really make it happen. So we feel that there's a proportionate contribution from this that is relevant to the site and what the site can provide.
And just to add to that as well, there's legal tests to do with planning obligations for things like 106s and the bridge link and so on. So those legal tests are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. So we think the contribution proposed here does meet those legal requirements, and requiring anything more would not be able to meet those legal requirements. So we think this is a sound contribution in accordance with the law and the policy.
Councillor Brennan.
Okay, I have two queries. First, it's relating to the affordable housing, because it just doesn't sound very affordable. And I can't understand why we seem to have moved to affordable housing, which isn't really affordable housing, as it's 3/4 of the price of normal private rent or London living wage, which is also, I think, a proportion of private rent and largely considered out of the range of anybody who's on benefits. That's my first point. And I mean, and I'm sorry to go back to that point, and that's linked to the fact that we do have a terrible crisis of people in need of housing who are sort of at the lower end of the income scale. And I don't think this is addressing the problem. So it doesn't count for me as affordable housing. Secondly, I don't know if I read this right, but on page 28, 3.34, it makes a mention of minor material amendments to the permitted scheme, etc. And then it talks about removing the college. And it seems to me that's not a minor material amendment, that's huge, because the whole development would be much, much more attractive if the college was still in existence in the application. So can you maybe explain why that's only a minor change? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just pick up on the second point, just about the college. It was the applicant's intention to build the college building, and for that to come forward, but the institution that had agreed to occupy the building pulled out of the contract. So then they went through a significant marketing exercise to try and find an alternative, and even look at the possibility of a healthcare operator or some sort of other similar use, and they were unable to find anyone. So that's part of their submission, that they've provided that, and it's just not feasible to come forward. And so that's why it would be a minor amendment, because it's a linked application that would basically just close that phase off, so that this scheme before you today could be constructed and built if it were to get planning permission. That makes sense. And just on the affordability, it links back to they're proposing a build to rent building. So in the London plan, which supports build to rent, it talks about it being under single management. Now, if it's single management, it can't really have low cost affordable rents, because then it would have to be operated by an RP or the local authority. So they've put forward a scheme that includes intermediate products, which obviously still meet a need in the borough. Some of that will be London Living Rent, which is, it enables people to save up to be able to afford to buy a house, and that would be targeted at families. So there isn't any low cost rent, but it does have a sizable portion of intermediate products for Haringey residents. Okay.
And just to add to that as well, in terms of the affordability question, so the London plan has specific policy on build to rent, which is London Plan H11, and it does set policy on the tenure mix to do with this. So the proposal complies with those policies in the affordability criteria. So there's very specific policy for build to rent and the definition of affordable housing, which is different to when we're considering an application for sort of wider general needs and housing for people to buy. So there's very specific policy on that, and that's set out in the committee report.
Dunstall.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I've got 3 points I was hoping you might be able to pick up on. The first one is, I believe it was on page 19, with regard property sizes and the volume of people kind of occupying those properties. So we've got 3 beds with 5 people, and so on. I'm just wondering what kind of family makeup we're presuming are going to be in there. Thank you, page 15. That's kind of, you know, appropriate. I'm assuming we'll have children sharing sharing bedrooms. Is that something that we are happy with and endorse? Could speak to that. Second one is around the page 76. The NHS ask. I see that the NHS asked for contribution of just over £230,000 to support increased health infrastructure capacity, over and above kind of the need that they would be able to meet through GP practices, and that what's being offered is about 25,000. Just wondered if you could speak a bit more about how we conclude. Well, I can see how we concluded that, but how that kind of fits and what, you know, knock-on pressures that will cause. And the third one is just about the bridge. And I've had a look at the model, and I can see that it joins the building at one side, and there's a kind of walk through. You know, there are large estates, specifically I used to do some work in Southwark, so the Aylesbury and the Haygate estate, where there was this ideal of kind of raised living and people would kind of move about. I know it's a bit different to that, but that kind of single access raised entry does risk antisocial behaviour and criminal activity being kind of more difficult to address and monitor where you've got that kind of single route in, single route out. I'm just wondering whether what, if anything, is being considered in that regard. I think those estates in South East London have kind of broadly been deemed not kind of, well, been knocked down, haven't they? But yeah, that there wasn't great planning.
Yeah, if I just start with that last point. So with the bridge and the access to it, obviously it comes off that activated square. So you have lots of eyes on the square around that area, and then it would also be managed by the applicant. So, you know, they would be monitoring it. If there's any problems, they'd be making sure that they're dealt with. So it's not really a bit like in an estate where you have sort of a raised situation. It's a very overlooked space, very well used. And obviously in the first instance, the bridge wouldn't be there. It'd just be that access to that platform and the community facility. On the NHS point, I think there's a considerable SIL contribution that the applicants are making as part of build to rent. So it's twice as much as the contribution that would normally be expected for residential development. And so I think the NHS specifically is seeking sort of contributions towards acute care and sort of extra mental health care. And there's a considerable sort of GP surgery that's being put in at the Wellborn Centre, which will serve thousands of people. And so basically for the size of the development and obviously what other developments have given towards that contribution, it's felt that contribution is fair and reasonable, given the SIL that they're providing and given the location of the Wellborn Centre and the healthcare services that will be in that. And just the last point on families, is it a concern that those aren't big enough?
Well, so it was more that with the proposal is, you know, if these are long-term properties for people, or even medium-term properties for people, there's an assumption in there that you've got 6 people in a 4-bed flat or 5 people in a 3-bed flat. I'm presuming, therefore, there are children of a certain age that are sharing rooms. Maybe we're fine with that as a general rule. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's limits to what the floor plan can provide. So I think wherever possible, they've sought to maximise those 3-bed, 6-person units, but in some cases that just wouldn't be possible. And so it's still a unit that would provide for families.
Just really quickly, I guess what I'm saying is if we're proposing that we would have kind of first refusal on placements of Haringey families into those properties, do we want to be placing people in situations where they're overcrowded again from the outset? And should we be looking at scaling down the size of those family units that would be put forward for them?
I think if I could just come in on that, the advantage of build to rent is a security of tenure. There's a longer term interest. So I think it's best to sort of to compare this with the existing private rented market. So the landlord could sell up at short notice if kids are in school. They could be moved around. So that's why we see this as an attractive family option. If you're saving for a deposit, the London Living Rent is an attractive product for people on those sort of financial incomes or in those situations. So it's with housing need, we have to try and meet all needs to really provide that balance of accommodation. So this is the intermediate product between private and social rented. So that's the sort of need we're trying to address is working families saving for deposits in private rented with uncertainty, sort of tightening that to give them a security and a sort of way to move out of rented and into a purchased property potentially. So I think these are obviously purpose designed as well, so the quality will be better. So I think there is a good narrative there in terms of what this does for families that is appropriate.
Councillor Jameson.
So the ground floors that said it will be rented out at a peppercorn rent. And what sort of businesses do we envisage being there, i.e. not betting shops?
Yeah, no, Class E is commercial, so it wouldn't, betting shops are sui generis, but the only thing that would be at a reduced rent would be the community space. So the rest of the spaces would just be typical commercial spaces let by the developer.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, just a correction of a small detail at page 23, par 3.24, second last line. It talks about the Harris Academy providing education for children between 11 and 18. But that's not correct, because the education at Harris Tottenham starts at 4 to 18. It takes the children through every stage of their education life. I just wanted that correction made. But it baffles me. Why do we need a 32-story tower at Tottenham Hill? Less than 5 minutes away from where that proposal is. It's the Elbourne Centre, and that's 30 what I think. That's in that sort of region anyway, and we see it now. The thing is being built out, and is not the most glorious sight you ever hope to see, Tottenham, or any other place for that matter. So I don't understand, where does the inspiration come from that we need a 32-foot tower in Tottenham with all sorts of stupid other connotations that runs around there? We had recently a meeting as Tottenham Hill councillors with local residents at the Rosa Luxembourg house, which is on the Ashley Road, within the Ashley Road context. And a couple of things that they were concerned about. One was smoking illegal substances. I'm not suggesting that we can do anything about that, just mentioning it. And the second thing is that they were complaining about lack of parking space. Now, I know we've got a policy in Haringey of no parking, and it's only for people who carry the green badge, but even that is faulty, because you could be not being able to walk and drive and do things like that for a short period of time. You pull the muscle in the gym, or you got kicked playing football badly, or whatever else. You might have a medical condition for a while which prohibits you, and you wouldn't have had a green badge. And these short states are unable to be properly mobilized, it causes difficulty if you haven't got a green badge. So I think we need to look at the allocation of green of parking within this complex, because the local residents are completely against it, right? They don't understand the approach of being near to transport systems and all the rest of it. They want a car like the next person. And I think we need to look at that and see whether we can make any provision for that approach. Just one thing about the bridge and walking around it. We in Harriet know all about raised bridges and things of that sort coming from the Broadwater Farm. And where did that land us in 1985? The whole place got burnt down. Let's hope it doesn't happen here.
Thank you for those comments. So I think that mostly the two questions were why the 32 floors and the lack of parking. Can we address those two first, please?
Yeah, it's car free because it's in Tottenham Hill, which is a really accessible area. So there's a number of bus routes, and then there's the station that are very close by. There is still the blue badge parking. I know you said that might not meet all needs, but certainly in these areas where it has such high public transport accessibility level, we are trying to reduce parking, which is in line with London plan policies and our own policy.
Councillor, if we could just bring in Richard, just to talk about the rationale for the height and perhaps the parallels between the bridge landing point and Broadwater Farm as well.
Thank you. Yes. So the reason why I'd say that the bridge is a good idea, the height is a good idea first, is that, I mean, we have already granted planning permission for 2 buildings which will be even taller than this. One of them, the Hale Village Tower, has already been completed, and there will be an even taller one on the west side of the Station Square as part of the Argent development. And this tower will form a third of that group of 3 towers that will sort of straddle and mark the Station Square. And this one in particular will in particular be on the corner of the station entrance and the new green link, east-west green link, which will run in a virtually straight line all the way from Tottenham High Road through to the Tottenham Marshes. So it'll form a fantastic new green link, and that's why the bridge is a good idea, because it'll be directly on the alignment of the green link, very clear and visible. It won't have any housing on it. It'll just be purely for people crossing the road and railway line, just as the bridge that's already there crosses the canal. And you have to go up and then back down to get to that one. That bridge works fine. I think you'll agree. Most people love that bridge. I think it's fantastic. And I think this could be similar to that, should be as similar as possible, to be honest, to that bridge. So it feels like one of the family. And it'll be a bridge on the route, not a bridge giving access to things except this little community centre.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. So Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. So on page 15.317, where it talks about the dwelling mix, I just wondered why or what the decision was behind not having any 2-bed wheelchair accessible homes as part of the mix. My second point, just jumping around a little bit. So in the addendum on page 2.8, there's an explanation of how it was a challenge to kind of maximize urban greening. Obviously, it's acceptable within the policy because of it being a mixture of residential and commercial, but it makes reference to it being a challenge to maximize the greening because of the need for maximum flexibility and unrestricted movement. And I just wondered if you could say a bit more about what that actually means. Is that for cars, for people? Yeah, what is the movement there that's required? And then my other point was just going to be about there's reference to the interim parking arrangements. And I note that TfL kind of also requested further detail on what that would look like. And I just wondered if we had those details sort of for how long and how much parking we envisage being offered. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the wheelchair spaces, I know that that's what it does there in the proposed dwelling mix, but under condition 4, it does require a plan to be submitted as to show how the wheelchair adaptable homes would be distributed across all tenures. So through the condition, we'd be seeking to see additional sort of wheelchair accessible homes across those as well. But yeah, I mean, maybe the applicants could answer that question about why they haven't selected that. Just on the public space, yeah, and urban greening, it is very much about Barrow House being a bit of a blockade at the moment and stopping that east to west movement. So they could increase the urban greening, but then that would have impacts on the public space, the ability to have the public art and the activity and sort of community things that they could put on there. And then also just that free movement of people, it restricts that. So it's a balance, and they've sort of chosen to go with accessibility over extensive greening and then not having that sort of freedom of movement. And I think it's difficult to expect that in those sort of places, those urban squares, close to district centres, where you wouldn't expect to have extensive greening. And obviously it links then to Downlane Park and further to the east to the wetlands and the paddock, where there is that more greening available. So, but also in the conditions as well, I think it's condition 19, there is just a requirement for them to just seek to show that they've done as much as they can to green as much as possible. So we'd be seeking further details on that. And the last question, sorry. Yeah, so I did show the interim parking. So there is a condition on that as well, which will require details of that and just to lay out the timeframes. So it's just linked to the leases that are currently signed with Barrow House. So some people have rights to park on the estate, so they can't get rid of those. So they've just come up with this interim solution where there would be more parking on the ground floor of the building and some alongside Barrow House. But we will ask for them to provide those details about how they're going to get rid of those and the timescales for it as well.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, you mentioned 33% enhanced single aspect. First of all, what is enhanced single aspect? Because some of the building events I go, single aspect is considered a no-go. And I think we're seeing more and more single aspect units being provided in our various applications. So that's a question. And then the statement is, I'd like the future QRP panels, when they consider schemes, to comment on single aspect. But if you could tell us what enhanced single aspect means.
Yeah, so the applicants have sought to minimise single aspect wherever possible. I think the enhanced basically just means at the corner of each dwelling, they have a balcony. So there is a degree of another aspect. They're not trying to make out that it is dual aspect, but they're just trying to say that it is slightly better than solely single aspect. So you could just at least have a slightly different view and windows onto another side wall. Because of the nature of the tower, it would be very difficult to not have any single aspect units. But like I say, they've tried to minimise those wherever possible. And with the single aspects, they've tried to make them as good as they can be.
Did you want to come in, Richard? Okay.
If you want me to, yes, I would definitely say that the QRP already do talk always about whether there are too many single aspect flats. I think we're getting better rather than worse on single aspect. I mean, I think in the past, the point about these so-called enhanced single aspect flats is in the past they used to be described as dual aspect, and quite a lot of our of what was described as dual aspect was in fact a flat with basically a single flat facade with a recessed balcony, a side window onto the balcony. That we no longer regard as being as being dual aspect, but it's better than a pure single aspect with just a flat facade and no recess whatsoever. Same with a small projection. But yeah, basically, I mean, this has got quite a high number of dual aspect flats at 66% of it, I think it is, isn't it? So this is on the very good side of single and dual aspect, especially for a tall building where deck access is not really possible on the higher floors.
Councillor Ibrahim?
I wanted to go back to the discussion about the bridge, because the bridge. So I'm not entirely kind of satisfied with obviously you've given some responses, because I do think raised walkways are a major concern in Haringey, actually, because of the ones on Broadwater Farm were removed for specific reasons and were always recognised as one of the major design issues, which led to the huge challenges we had there. And obviously once they were removed, that's why kind of the estate does feel sometimes to be quite disjointed. But some of the issues are, and I'm looking at the picture on 128 where I can see the bridge, but I'm trying to see where the railway line is. Because I mean, I can see that part of it is over potentially an area which people would be walking under. Should I go and have a look at it? Well, I can't. It's not clear on here. But I suppose my question is, it's not entirely over a railway line, is there? There are points at which people can walk underneath it, and that's one of the generally, I mean, I would consider that to be one of the issues where you've got single access and exit points. And obviously, if there is an issue going on at either side and people are throwing things over, there's not much you can do about that.
Yes, please. And then
my question related to it was going to be, sorry, has there been a discussion with the police around it? Because obviously what we would like ultimately is to kind of design out crime and to do that jointly with you know, police partners. And I know with some applications that does happen and some proposals. So what are there any comments on that? Because it could just be that we're, you know, that they don't have the concerns, so why should we?
So if you can come back on that, but then I will give a few minutes just if people want to look at the model and have an explanation. But if you can come back on that, or whoever wants to come back on.
I'll just mention the Metropolitan Police Service, the design out crime officer has commented on the scheme and is happy with the attached condition. Obviously, the scheme itself doesn't include the bridge, so he's only looked at basically the scheme within itself, which includes the bridge obviously isn't part of the scheme, but when it comes forward, it would have to go through those sort of rigorous assessments anyway, and the Met Police would be involved in that to make sure it gets rid of those antisocial behaviour issues.
And so part of this application, there's a commitment to do a feasibility for the bridge. So what we can make sure happens is that when we're looking at the feasibility, not just the technical side of it, but make sure designing out crime and safety is considered in the feasibility study that this application commits to doing.
Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, just two quick things. On the 6 months preference for Haringey residents, is that why is it 6 months particularly? You know, could it have been longer? And is that kind of generally what's considered acceptable? And this might be one for the applicants, I'm not sure, but just looking at that, the public realm that's being looked at being created. Obviously in the video, it's fairly lively, lots of people walking past and restaurants and eyes on the street, etc. I just wondered if there's any kind of provision for either kind of preferential treatment for businesses which do provide kind of later opening, and any provision in case, you know, there's trouble letting some of those units in the future where it might not be, you know, might not be in such a favourable climate, and you might end up with empty units.
Yeah, I think on other schemes we do seek less time, so it would normally be about 3 months. So it's basically a longer period just to try and make sure that the people that are going into the units are Haringey residents. On the later opening, I'm sure it's the developer's absolute intention to make sure there aren't empty units. That's part of why the scheme's coming forward to sort of activate those spaces and provide more opportunity for businesses to occupy, because there's some existing units that don't have occupants. This is part of that rationale for the scheme that this brings forward that activation. And yeah, there's certainly, that's why they had some of those dusk and nighttime images to show that that's certainly their intention, to make sure that there's businesses opening later, so it's more of a daytime nighttime economy in the new development.
I think just to add, although the obligation is at the 6-month marketing period, there is an obligation that families shall be prioritised for discount market rented family 3-bed homes. So that would be in perpetuity. If there's 2 competing lettings available, the family gets priority. So, and we can build that in and just make that clearer.
Okay, all right. So if any of the members want to have a look at the model and want an explanation about the bridge, then I'll 5 minutes. So Richard can and can I invite the applicant to see.
Land between the railway and the road. So the idea is the bridge goes over the road and then over the railway. And there are 3 exit points, one on the west side of the road, one on the east side of the road between the road and the railway.
Right, so you've got an
Go access straight into the station, and one on the east side of the railway. And what you've got to remember is there's already a bank built up in Hale Village on this side. So the bank is built up to what's supposed to be the level of the bridge. This will provide the steps up to a platform on that side. So what will then have to be provided is the bridge itself over the road and railway, and the steps and lift down on the between the road and the railway. So yes, it'll cross over the road, but it'll go straight down to the road on both sides. I mean, we already have a bridge just over here. If the model went a little bit further, we've already got a bridge going over the canal, which also goes over the canal towpath.
Right.
So, and we've not had any problem, and also
Slightly more secluded. I mean, the issues on Broadwater Farm were people up
Yeah.
there throwing things.
But I imagine that was partly because the bridges
Yeah.
were quite a long way from the road. It wasn't
true.
easy to get from the upper level of the bridge to the road below, whereas there's always steps down straight away on either side of the road here.
Okay.
You don't. It's not as though you'd have to go all the way over here before you can get back down to street level.
Okay. Yeah.
You can go down to street level. This is all dependent on the feasibility study, but this is just a design intent, as it's called in architectural circles. But,
The bridge you're talking about, that being the bridge just over the canal. but
yes,
the
yeah,
Bridge further down because we've got the marshes.
the bridge over the canal. There's a new bridge that's recently been built over the canal. It actually goes over the Pims Brook, and then over the canal towpath, and over the canal. It's plaza on the Hale Village, on the Hale Wharf side, and then down with a lift either end. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just waiting for Councillor Ibrahim to come back, and then the applicant team. Okay, so there are no objectors for this item, but we've got the applicant team here who are able to answer questions. Can you, oh, so it's quite a lot of you actually. Can you come forward, please? You might need to. Thank you. So you're sharing microphones, but could you just quickly introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Paul Eaton from Allies and Morrison Architects. Jonathan Carkeet, Berkeley Square Developments with the developer. I'm Ben Kelway from Litchfields Planning Consultants.
Aidan Potter from John McCaslin and Partners.
Paul Honegraff with Berkeley Square Development.
Okay, thank you. So do members have any? Yes, they do. Any questions for the applicant team? And we'll start with you, Councillor Emery.
Thank you for this. Yeah, so visiting a nearby development, there were some issues with the bin facilities. They were overcrowded and you actually couldn't access some of the recycling facilities as well. At 6.17.4, you can see that we already know that the bin space isn't enough. That's noted in the remarks. I think if you look at the size of the room, so if you look at the, yeah, I'll let you get to the point I was making first about 6.17.4.
Page, please.
91, was it? Thanks. 91. 6.17.4. So you can see, we can see the facilities aren't enough in terms of requirement. We think we're going to have problems there. But then if you look at page 133, so you look at the 2 barrel yard ground floor pan, you can see also it's quite an awkward shape. Now, I think one solution would be to move the 14 square meter retail bin space onto the corner, onto retail space 4. I think this problem very much concerns me because it's going to be a problem we're going to have in the future, and it would be much easier to solve it now rather than solve it later when we can't actually build or move anything.
Thanks very much for your question. So at the moment, the refuse collection has been designed on the basis of twice weekly collections on a managed basis. So this is as a build to rent scheme, there's a concierge service, so that waste is managed, including things like a compactor. But also, because of the management company, we've seen it with the Gesner building next door. We work very hard with residents to maximise recycling, and that allows us to reduce the size of the waste storage. And I agree with you, it's a challenge because there's a reconciliation between creating that active ground floor and that corner unit which you identify. And the great thing about that unit is it turns the corner and it allows us to have that sort of visual line with the offices. So it's a challenge where we increase the size of the footprint of refuse collection. And because it's a privately managed building, we can manage that space very actively. And what we've agreed with officers is to undertake a monitoring within 12 months, I think, Phil. And if in the event that we do need twice weekly collections, we have to pay a further, I believe, £100,000 to cover the cost of an additional refuse collection lorry. I'm looking at officers here. I believe that is in the 106. So the onus is on us to actively manage that space, and it promotes recycling. And we've seen that in the way that things like the Gesner are running. But it's a very fair question.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back on that?
Officers fine with that situation as it stands? Are officers fine with that situation as it stands? Do you see any concerns?
Yeah, so we've sort of put in that forced fail-safe so that we've got the monitoring there, and if it does require that extra collection, then we've got the payment there to cover the extra vehicles that are needed.
Okay, thank you. Any Councillor Bev?
Yeah, so it mentions on-site presence. Can you explain what on-site present means? And is it 24 hours? And does the on-site person have a separate unit that he sits in or operates from? I mean, you just talked about the rubbish, which is really crucial, because when we visited Rosa Luxemburg, I don't think we've actually got that quite sorted yet. So, and it does give a really bad impression when residents go in to do their rubbish and it stinks, and, you know, so I think, but we talked about that. And then you talk about skilling up existing workforce apprenticeships. And I wonder if you have any intention to use Canal, because Canal have a big new apprentice centre at Meridian Water that's just been opened. And I'm wondering whether you're going to use that facility to train up some of the youngsters who you're going to have as apprenticeships. And then the last point is, how do these rental units work concerning Airbnb? How do you control that?
So just in taking those questions in turn, so the first one was about the on-site management. So the concierge is there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The building is fully managed at all times. In just building on then to your second question about the apprenticeships, absolutely, and indeed for the last 5 years, whilst we've been building the other parts of the Beryl development, we've been working with the Harrogate employment teams to maximise employment, local employment apprenticeship opportunities, and that's something again which is in the section 106 as a commitment to offer apprenticeships, support those, pay for those, host local workshops, advertise those jobs, and it's something which we're very much supportive of. And the final question about Airbnb, as officers mentioned earlier, because the GLA policy is for the entire building to be owned and operated by a single institution, there is no opportunity for any form of Airbnb. It is not possible to do in a build to rent scheme.
Well, so what you're meaning, if a resident did it, you'd pick it up before?
It would breach the terms of their lease. So they would be asked to leave. It's not possible.
Councillor Brennan.
Well, I was going to follow up on the college because I like the sound of the college so much and just wanted to know how that happened, that it fell away.
The college came to us via the council, Ada College. They were funded by the DFE and the GLA. They prepared a design for a building which we warmly supported. We obtained that planning permission. We cleared the site for them. We demolished everything, all of our buildings, which were providing us with a rental income, and we hoarded the site and made it ready for them. And when they came to buy the site, they did not have the money to build it or buy it. We extended the contract by 12 months. We went to the Department for Education. I went to Westminster myself to try and persuade the DFE. We offered to build them the building and rent it back to them, but they didn't have any money. So we gave them essentially, in the end, I think 15 months beyond the end of their contract to try and buy it and raise the money. And unfortunately, the GLA, the council, the DFE could not afford that. So we subsequently appointed Knight Frank's specialist education team to go on a countrywide marketing. We built a website. I put hoarding up with nice images of what it could look like. And I went to meetings with universities in London and across the country. We went to life sciences, and the location doesn't suit. And the building that they designed is very bespoke, and it wasn't something. So whilst I share your disappointment, well, the key for us was about activation, and what we've sought to do with this application and by promoting the Beryl House as more commercial is to bring back what the college offered, which is the enlivenment of the neighbourhood, and that's what it really for us was all about, was about trying to make the place really active.
Councillor O'Donoghue.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to come back to the point related to the NHS calculation of the additional pressure on the local National Health Service because of this build. And of course, we welcome everyone that's going to be living there to Haringey. But just to put it in context, very briefly, in terms of Tottenham, in some other areas of the country, a person may expect to start suffering ill health at around 68. In Tottenham, it is 12 years earlier, 57 to 58 on average, and they're expected to spend at least the last 18 years of their life in poor health. Now, of course, we hope people moving in will be in good health, but of course they'll get old, may become disabled, they may suffer from dementia. Sadly, they may suffer from mental health. The NHS calculated that a reasonable support for the additional pressure would be £233,000. The offer that you've made is less, well, 10% of that, 25,000. I'd like that to be reconsidered, taking into account the development and the profit that will hopefully be made in terms of the development, but also in terms of the people who are buying and living in your properties, and the fact that they will need the National Health Service over the years. 25,000 does appear to be an incredibly paltry amount. It wouldn't, and that would be stretched over, you know, the 80, 100 years of your project. £25,000 would hardly pay for a nurse for 1 year.
Right, can I just bring Robbie McLaughlin first, and I will bring you in.
Yes, thank you. So I think it's worth noting a couple of things in this point. This area has been subject to a master plan approach, which did include GP provision at the Wellborn. So that has done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of this, the impacts of new residents on the area. I think we're out in front of other boroughs in seeking this through Section 106 contributions, and have secured a number already, whereas a lot of others would put this into CIL charges, which can also contribute to that. So we've looked at what's been generated by the Wellborn in terms of capacity, and what we feel the sort of residual is from that, and made a proportionate calculation based on that. And I think at paragraph 6.9.10 on page 72, where this issue is discussed, it shows what the sort of benchmark for viability in terms of contributions is here, which is about £1,000 per unit based on the current CIL charge, and the total contributions we've secured on this are well in excess of that. So we've had to balance all of those things off against each other, and we feel that this is a proportionate contribution in those circumstances.
Just to say, I mean, I echo your words about the NHS and the value of it. And the challenge for us is that the BTR policy set by Haringey is the levy is twice. If I put this in as a traditional build to sell development, the levy is half. So here we're contributing £2.45 million to Haringey through the CIL. If I put this in as a build to sell scheme, it would be £1.25 million. So there is this substantial benefit that goes to Haringey by being a build to rent scheme. And part of that is to offset that NHS. And I went to the NHS meeting with the officers, and we offered the 25,000 because I agree with what you're saying. And it was put there as a gesture to show that as an applicant, we agree with what you're saying. We didn't want to set a benchmark of not contributing, but fundamentally it's covered in the 2.45 million that's coming to Haringey directly as a contribution from this scheme.
Can I just bring Rob Shizovsky in as well?
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to what the applicant has said, and that is correct, the CIL charge levy for build to rent in the east of the borough is double what a build to sale would have to pay. So it is a substantial contribution. And whilst we do feel we have secured a Section 106 contribution which satisfies the legal Section 106 test that I outlined earlier, it is still a fact that there is a £2.4 million CIL contribution here. So how that is spent by the council is not directly material for today, but our CIL policy documents do say that we will spend CIL on health in the regeneration areas, including Tottenham Hale. And just to give some reassurance around the edges on that, we do work closely with the NHS on how we spend CIL money, and working on an infrastructure delivery plan which goes alongside with the local plan. So whilst we feel that the Section 106 contribution is satisfactory for this, and in light of the CIL contribution, it's not the complete end of the story. We still look at how we spend CIL in the key areas where there is new development and new people moving in and adding a pressure to the NHS, the National Health Service. So it's not the end of the story on that, but I think we've got as far as we can get in terms of the application in front of us today. Thanks.
Councillor Warren?
Thank you. Could I just ask the applicant to pick up on the point I raised earlier about the proposed dwelling mix and the lack of two-bed wheelchair accessible homes? Thank you.
Thank you. The wheelchair mix, as you rightly pointed out, is distributed between one-bedroom flats and three-bedroom flats. When you're designing a tall building like this, the complexity of the way that you stack the units is quite an important thing to consider. For example, if you offset structure or flats, then suddenly the carbon cost of the project, for example, goes up. You just build in more structure, as it were. So it's largely a result of finding a good mix between family size units and smaller units, but also making sure that we are as optimum as possible with our use of carbon in the building and efficient stacking. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jamieson, did you want to come in?
I wanted to ask about allocations. Are we intending for this building to house Haringey residents, people who are already on our housing list?
No, that's not the case. No. So
it's anyone over London can get a home at 75% of rent in one of these buildings, but they can't, it's not going to our residents first.
No, it's going to our residents first. Yeah, they would have priority. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, we can't rule out that someone on the housing waiting list won't take up one of these units. I think that's important to say that, if they meet if they can afford the London living rent, they could, but, it won't be the highest priority people, that are looking for social rented units. But the priority is for local people and local families. So we have that marketing period for local Haringey residents and priority for family occupiers. So yes, that is to bring it in line with our intermediate housing policy, which is to prioritise family housing for people in need.
And how will that happen? How do people know about this? How do they?
So yeah, so some of those obligations include a marketing strategy. So that has to set out how they will target people. So it'll be more of a private strategy, but there are opportunities to sign up for intermediate waiting lists and things like that. Which we've seen in some of the sale products. So people can then find these when they're searching for an intermediate product and get on that waiting list and be prioritized then with those eligibility criteria.
And just to add, on page 5.d, there's a commitment to developing an approach to allocations jointly with the council for the affordable units, and that will align with the council's intermediate housing policy. So there's a commitment in the Section 106 heads of terms to commit to that. So working with the council, following the intermediate housing policy, and making sure that aligns with the council's priorities. So that will work hand in hand with our own council housing service to make sure that people most in need get that in accordance with the policy.
Councillor Dunstall, so it's questions for the applicant, please.
Case I will ask.
Okay, all right. Councillor Rice, questions to the applicant?
Thank you. First of all, can I thank you for the model? I have long tried to persuade this committee that it'd be a useful feature of our understanding of the developmental things if we did have a model to follow. And I'm grateful for that. Just matter of interest. I mean, I think members may be getting the impression that the dwellings which we're looking at, and we'll decide one or another shortly about, for local council housing need. It is not a proportionate for local council housing need, but a large proportion is for sale on the private market. But it is. I mean, I remember we had when Hale Village was first being put together, it was refused by the committee, and then the mayor called it in and granted permission. And the next thing we knew, the flats that were being so-called built for the local community were being advertised in Hong Kong so you mustn't get the impression that these are cozy little flats for local people.
Councillor Rice, that's not correct. These are built for rent. Okay, so.
But there's some. Listen.
Sorry, can we just let the applicant team? Can you just clarify that, please? That these are built for rent.
Chair, thank you. I can confirm these are built to rent. There is a covenant within the Section 106 agreement preventing us from selling these individual flats. We did the Gesner, I've done Building 1, I've done Rosa Luxembourg. Not one of my flats has ever been sold. They are all available either at rent or social rent. No, we don't sell things outside. It's for rent.
But I hear what you're saying, and if I'm wrong, then I withdraw that comment. But I went to Hale Village not so long ago to that hotel site that's going up there, to the top flat, and they did ask what was the value, what was the rent, or what was the purchase cost of this flat, and I was told close on £1 million. You know,
So that scheme's not relevant to today.
Well, no, it's not
Pointing to
relevant,
page 5 of the committee report in the section 106 heads terms on affordable. Point C, there's a commitment to provide a dedicated 6-month marketing priority period for local Haringey residents for the affordable rented units, and there's a commitment in that. So that is all in accordance with the London Plan policy on build to rent.
So let's get this clear, that these flats which we've been asked to agree quite shortly or disagree are being built for people on low incomes, and the rents will be subsidized through what a formulation of scheme there is. Is that right?
The affordable proportion, yes. The private rent ones are for private rent. And I should also say the wider picture of the site allocation talks about this being mixed use and with employment uses on the site, and the residential sort of cross subsidizing the employment, because the development can be very difficult and unviable to deliver. So there's a specific acknowledgement in the site allocation that employment is difficult to deliver, and you do need some private sale or rent. In this case, the proposal is rent to fund that, so it's part of the allocation.
I'm grateful for that. You come with some of these flats would be available for private rent and private purchase. Yes.
No purchase, it's built to rent.
No purchase. All right.
Switch off your microphone, please, Councillor Rice. Councillor Emery, I've got Councillor Ibrahim, and then I want to sort of bring this to a close. So Councillor Emery, please.
It's a short one, Chair, it's fine. So obviously the bridge come up a lot earlier, and the bridge has been used quite extensively in terms of advertising the plans. In terms of promotion, will it continue to be used? Because I'm a bit concerned really that obviously these plans of the bridge may take 20 years or so, and I'm just a bit concerned that people moving into the area might be a bit done.
So the bridge itself, I mean, is a really important aspiration to see it connected. But in the interim, the building's been designed conscious that it's something that won't be delivered overnight. So what we're providing at the head of the bridge is through the square. You go up that staircase as we did in the video, and we provided this space for the local community as an arts and gallery space. And whilst the bridge doesn't physically exist, where the bridgehead is, where that landing is, we've offered to glaze that so that it becomes a winter garden. So it's accessible, it's usable all year round, and essentially it extends that space being used by the community. And the view when you come out of the station will be, this will be the initial thing you see, is actually the community space, the Welcome to Tottenham. And for us, it's this fantastic opportunity to showcase Tottenham talent. And I love the idea that they can overlook the balcony as part of it. They overlook the public square. We've offered a commitment to provide the public space for public art. So it's potential that we could see talent being showcased in the gallery, but also in the public square. So there will always be a driver for people to go up into that space, and it will be available right from the start of the development. And as I say, it's enclosed so that it's available year round and until that bridge is delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Ibrahim.
So I was going to ask about some of the marketing that you'll undertake around the rental units, and also obviously because you'll know that the rental market over the last year has been wild, particularly in North London. And obviously, lots of people's experiences have been quite difficult in terms of one rental unit comes up for rent and there's 40, 50 people, up to 100. People have been offering crazy money, like 1 year's rent in advance to I went through it over the last year. Luckily we found somewhere, but estate agents were telling us that the people that were getting into a lot of the properties were offering 6 months, 1 year's rent in advance. So it's going to be a huge challenge. So in terms of kind of having an element of, because you're not a local authority, there isn't a queue, there isn't a, first come, first serve, there is some kind of process. So in terms of marketing and managing expectations, because I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of take up for particularly for the 75% units. So what's your plans around that?
Thank you. It's a very good question. Our experience with the building next door is with the Gesner, so I can give you some direct experience. We've been running 166 build-to-rent apartments next door, and that building has proved really popular. And you're quite right that where we've got those discount market rent, they are very popular. And we know that the rental product really fulfills a housing need. And the great thing with the build-to-rent is because it's run by an institution, there isn't estate agents, there aren't intermediaries. You're dealing with the people that run and own that building, and it's very well organised. I actually lived there for 15 months, so I've been through the process. I understand it, and so it's a very managed. You have to approve with the council the management process for the building and for the letting. So we've got the 6-month local priority for Haringey residents. We've got the 6-month Haringey family priority as well. But there's also then the overarching safeguard that the management plan for the building is approved by Haringey and their housing team. But it's very much about making sure that the residents come and stay, and that for the longer term. That's how the building is best done, and making it feel like a home for the longer term. So I think you should be reassured that through that build to rent and all the safeguards, it'll be a much smoother and it will prove to be very popular as a product.
I suppose what I'm trying to get at a little bit is the process, because obviously in a market system where you've got a finite amount of properties and an excessive amount of demand for the properties, then inevitably there will be people that will lose out. But it's how you judge. I suppose what I'm interested in is okay, great, no estate agents, but for many people, like lots of men in suits, there's no estate agents. It's the same thing, really. So in terms of kind of making sure that people do in Tottenham and Haringey as a whole do feel that they've got some kind of, and not the people on the highest incomes, because we've got, there are people who live in Haringey that are on a very high income as well. So it's obviously that, to get an understanding of how widely you will market it to make sure that there is a good mix of people and not just, people with very well paid jobs who may well live in Haringey, but at the same time, you still need that mix.
I suppose all I can say is from my experience of living in the next door BTR is there is a very broad mix of people, and there is a lot of marketing that goes on. There's a lot of promotion to try and encourage, and there is a waiting list, and that's done in order of priority. So and then again that gets recorded with the council. So there are safeguards, but there's certainly, my experience is it's a very broad mix of different people there.
I'll bring you in, Councillor. I want to bring Robert.
Yeah, if I may, I could perhaps suggest an enhancement to head of term 2D, just to this is the relative to the allocations of those units, which prioritises family houses. I think we could enhance that by saying prioritise Haringey residents and households, and then that makes that clear. I think that's a bit implicit in things we've discussed and the approach that's been taken in other places, and there'll be more detail when that plan is submitted to us. But I think that would be an enhancement that would address some of the concerns we've heard this evening.
Okay, so Councillor O'Donovan, then I want to bring this to a close.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the aspects I really welcome about this is the community infrastructure, which I think, as you know, is incredibly important, not just for the health of the people, but also for social cohesion. And there's the outdoor space, which I hope will be used for things like music events, etc. And then there's also the cultural and art space, which I hope wouldn't be used not just for the display of art by people locally, but also for display of the history, the very rich history of Tottenham Hale, and something that we haven't had yet, not just the history of the Eagle Beryl factory, but the Leibus factory, etc. And that history of working class people working there, Jewish people, Irish people. So that's something that's really missing, and I hope when Haringey Council start using it, that will be an important part. In terms of its use, at the moment there seems to be a proposal for a 15-year lease with the 3 years at the start rent free. That would be 80% of the prevailing market rent, and then there will be 2 5-year periods added together to 25. I know the regeneration team has requested a 25-year lease at peppercorn rent because they're saying that most grant-given bodies require at least 25 years. So I would hope consideration would be given to that 25 years. But then also as councillors, we have to think about the future when we're not going to be here, but the need will still be here. What will happen after 25 years? That area will still need this public space, this People's Gallery, which I hope we'll be calling it. And is there room to have some sort of joint management scheme or covenant so that we know that in the future, this space will always be for communal use at low cost? Thank you.
So to answer the specific question about the 15 years, the 15 years follows the covenant that sits on top of the building as part of the 106 requirement for the build to rent. And so in order, as we've officers have said, because it's under single ownership, it needs to follow that same 15-year period. But what we've added in here is this right to renew, because we hope it's going to be a big success. I think it will be somewhere that really will be a showcase for Tottenham talent. And that's something which we really think is missing. And if we have a thriving Beryl House and we have a thriving community space, that will become so successful, it will become obvious. It gets extended, and the challenge is a legal one. It's not an aspiration, or it's not a shortage of aspiration about that space. So we've given that 5-year renewal, and for me, I hope it becomes fulfilling, that it just carries on. I think it should do.
Chair, if I may just add, whilst those additional terms have been requested, that there would be no policy basis for that. So, in discussions with the applicant, we looked at a number of options for what this could deliver, and we've prioritised the no-cost rented housing over that, which had a viability impact that meant some of the discount market rent that we see in the proposal now could be supported. So we've followed the policy really, and our housing guidance on what we can achieve from this scheme.
Thank you very much. So I think we've had good questions. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if anyone who hasn't asked a question wants to ask. No? Okay. All right then. Thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you for that. So we'll now move to the recommendation, and I'd like to ask Robbie McKnocker to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So recommendation is to grant subject to the 106 and referral to the GLA. Members should note the additional condition set out in the addendum and suggested heads of terms that we've discussed, amending head of term 2D to include a priority for Haringey residents in the affordable housing, and also I've suggested in head of term 9 to include consideration of secure by design principles in the bridge feasibility study to address that comment, and that's the recommendation with those amendments.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is to grant. So we'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Can you just put your hand? That's it.
10 and 4.
Okay. Anyone against? And any abstentions? Okay. Right, thank you. Okay, so that is carried. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, so we now move on to item 9, which is update on major proposals. That's pages 361 to 376. This item is to note, and if you've got any questions, please direct them to Robbie McKnocker. No questions? Okay, thank you. Item 10. Applications determined under delegated powers, and that's pages 377 to 400. That report is to note. Any questions to Robbie McKnocker, which you can do either later or now? No? Okay, well, any questions later? So item 11, there are no new items of urgent business. And can I just say to Councillor Bevan, I do apologise for the hiccup with the papers. There was someone on holiday and one thing, but we'll make sure that we get them, that the papers are out in good time. And item 12 is date of next meeting. So please note that the date of next meeting is the 18th of July 2023. So thank you very much indeed, everyone. And the meeting is now closed. Thank you.